Hey there, and welcome to That's Audacious, where we share entrepreneurial stories from amazing leaders to inspire and motivate you to be bold, brave, and audacious. I'm your host, Lauren Clement, the brand navigator, here to share stories that will make you say, well, that's audacious. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the That's Audacious podcast. Today we have the fabulous Carmen Sederino with us. And Carmen, I met you in Melbourne and was absolutely blown away with your stage presence, your delivery, and just your whole approach to storytelling. So I can't wait to talk to you today. Carmen is the founder and visionary behind Illuminated Story, a revolutionary approach to transforming high-stakes presentations into unforgettable performances. And we're going to learn a lot more about what that means and Carmen's background today. Carmen, you've got a unique blend of theatrical artistry, business acumen, and communication expertise. Those three things blend together in such an interesting way. You've established yourself as a premier strategist for visionary founders and global leaders who want to elevate their public speaking from just words to lasting impact. Carmen, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. Tell us, you've got such a blended background. Where did that all come from? How did that all come together?
Well, thanks for having me on the show, first of all, Lauren. Great to be here. And it was so good to connect at the speaking event that we both ended up at together. Okay, where did it all start? It is an interesting combination, isn't it? Business, performance. It all started when I was very little. Believe it or not, I was a very, very shy child and never imagined I would be speaking on stages. But my mum enrolled me in a calisthenics class when I was about 5 years old, and I loved going each week and learning the dances, etc. But then there was an end-of-year concert, and my whole family thought there is no way that Carmen is going to get up on that stage. But I did, and I was smiling and waving and just felt right at home. So I went on to study theatre. I did local theatre from when I was 8 years old. Again, all through primary school, my teachers just found it incredible because some of our shows would travel, and our school was one of the places we travelled to. So they would see me performing on stage, playing these huge characters, and I was the quiet child up at the back of the classroom just doing her work. So they'd always say to my parents, I cannot believe that is Carmen on stage. I went and did a Bachelor of Performing Arts at Monash University as a young adult. And I stayed and I did my honours year where I wrote my own theatre show. I put it on, produced it, directed it, acted in it, cast it, and was very proud to get a high distinction for that whole year, which very heavily relied on the thesis that I wrote about the show. So why did I make all the decisions about the characters, the storyline? Why was the lighting that way at that moment? Why was the sound that way at that moment? So I'm going to park that world for a moment, because then I got a part-time job while I was studying just to earn money at a corporate organisation that was a big retailer within the construction industry. And I would just sell on the shop floor a few days a week, earning some money. When I finished my degree, my boss said, can you come and work for us full time? And I said, no, I need to keep my days free for auditions. And she said, well, I will let you go to those auditions when your agent gets them. And you can do the jobs if you get them. And other than that, you'll work for us full time. So I was like, well, that's a pretty good deal. So I said, yes. I then spent 18 and a half years at that company. I ended up climbing the ladder. I went into a state role where I would look after all of their shops, retail shops in Victoria. I would help with their customer service training, sales training, merchandising, recruitment. I then became the national manager of that team and ran the national team in Australia. We went into New Zealand, so I did that there as well. And then I decided to study marketing because even though it was a huge company and there was a separate training department, my role, even though it was heavily training, fell under the marketing department. So I did a marketing degree, and in the last couple of years I was there, I actually became the brand manager for their bathroom portfolio. They would sell all of the bathroom products you have in your beautiful bathrooms. And that sent me to China, to manufacturers. I worked with agencies on brands. We would pitch overseas to exclusive brands to bring them into the Australian market exclusively. So I saw good pitches, bad pitches, everything in between. I had to teach my national team how to speak because they had to deliver 2 weeks worth of classroom training before e-learning existed. They had to speak at state meetings, and they often had to speak in front of people that were considered more senior than themselves. And what I found was that people would lie to me in interviews. We often hired within. So they'd say to me, yes, I'd be very happy to stand up and speak in front of lots of people. And then they'd get the job and they'd be like, oh, stand up and speak in front of lots of people. So we would spend a lot of time. I would spend a lot of time just naturally coaching them and saying, you can do this. It's a skill. Let's do it. And within 12 months in that role, it was their favorite thing to do in their role. And the company often saw them different by the end of that 12 months. And a lot of them went on into senior management because of this newfound skill in speaking. So I'm nearly there, Lauren. I know it's a long story. 7.5 years ago, I decided to leave that very, very safe, well-paid corporate job and dive into entrepreneurism. And I started my own business called Illuminated Story. And ever since, I have helped both corporate people and speakers and thought leaders now around the world, not initially, but now around the world, to elevate their speaking to another level. And at the moment, I actually help thought leaders and speakers take their keynotes from what I call a standard keynote to a keynote show, where we blend corporate acumen and key points and the message that you need to get across with theatrical elements that make the experience a whole nother level for the audience.
Yeah, I love it. What a journey. What an amazing journey where you found that happy place being the stage, and you'd experienced that yourself as such a young child, to now see that in the people that you're working with, to see them go. Because I know we hear it all the time. The fear of public speaking is worse than the fear of death or the fear of spiders or whatever else, But when you love it, and obviously you do, it's a shared passion of ours, I guess, speaking. It's our happy place being there, and people fear it so much. When you see that transformation, that someone starts to love being there, what does that do for your soul, Carmen, when you see that someone just can't wait to do it again?
Yes, it's just, when you get shivers, and you can just feel it when it clicks for my client, and especially when they get incredible results. It's all about the outcomes that you want to get from your speaking, and that can be different for everyone. But yeah, and I think people come in thinking, I need to get rid of the nerves. I can't feel nervous when I speak. And one of the things that I would teach them is that it's okay. It's okay to feel nervous. I still feel nervous before I speak because I care and I want it to go really well. And yes, there are nerves that are debilitating, and there's techniques and exercises you can do to reduce that, because you don't want to be so nervous that it's going to make your voice shaky or make you go red or whatever might happen, make you sweat profusely. But a little bit of nerves is okay, because as you would know, Lauren, being a speaker yourself, you need more energy. You need to present with more energy when you're up in front of large groups of people than you would in a small meeting room where you're just presenting to two people. And I'll often say to clients, if you present the same way on the stage as you do in the small meeting room, you're going to be really dull and lifeless and boring. And if you present the same way you should present on the stage in that small meeting room, you're going to come across a bit crazy. You need to adjust for the situation and for the purpose of why you're there.
I love it. So immediately we're into myth busting here, that, hey, big thing, no ums, no ahs, you've got to get rid of the fear. I love that, because the first question I was going to ask you is, okay, what are some of the myths that we have? Because if you're listening to this and you are either a speaker or you'd like to do more of that, this is what we need to learn, that stage presence and everything else. Because when someone books you to speak, they want to have the confidence that you can deliver. They want to know that you're an expert, you've got the content, you know what you're doing, but they also want you to have an impact on the audience. You want them to walk away after the conference, days, weeks, months later, still doing the thing that the person booked you to speak about, whether that's resilience or change or wellness or teamwork or whatever it is. They want you to have an impact on them. So where is the line drawn, I guess, Carmen? Because it might be a lot of people listening to this going, oh my goodness, I'm not a performer. I'm a very corporate speaker. I have very nice slides. I don't wander around the room. I like to hide behind the lectern. I don't think I could do that. I don't know how to move. All this fear coming in around performing versus speaking. What's your way of helping people overcome that?
Oh, well, look, it really does come down to the individual and what I'm seeing. What I would say, if you're the person that Lauren just described and you're thinking, I don't know if I can do that, well, then my answer would be yes, you absolutely can. And your mindset is huge in whether you're going to achieve it or not. So instead of thinking I can't do that, maybe thinking I don't know how to do that yet, and I can learn how to do that because this is a skill. It's not something you're born with. People don't just get born and they're amazing speakers. So you can absolutely learn how to perform. And when I say perform, because people will say, I just want to be authentic. That's not me. I don't perform. I mean perform as you, and you have many facets to yourself. So think about how you use your voice and your body if you're at church, maybe with your grandma or your family, and it's a quiet setting, so you need to use a quieter voice, and you might not move around much because you're expected to sit, and there's certain expectations in that space. And then think about yourself if you're at a sporting match. Let's say, football is big in Australia. The code changes depending on what state you're in. But let's say you're at the football and it's your team and you're really passionate and you use a big voice and you got big hands, coming out and yelling and screaming at the umpires or the team or whatever, or cheering. That's all still authentically you. And you've used your body and your voice completely differently in those settings. So what if you could tap into that and use your body and voice in the way that is appropriate to tell the story you're telling on that stage, so that you're captivating rather than holding back and just being that sort of standard corporate speaker who has the nice slides. You've got a cool story, but you're not telling it at the level that it could be told at to truly captivate the room.
I love it. I love it. And that's the whole thing, isn't it? But what you talk about in terms of performance is just performing as you really well. But also, when you can do that, your storytelling becomes way more impactful, doesn't it? And people just really lean in and they want to be part of it. So if you're liking what you're hearing, there are lots of other That's Audacious episodes available to you to find on your favorite podcast channel. Just like and subscribe and you'll get every episode each time. Now, Carmen, what I'd like to talk about in the second half of the interview is what are some of the tips you might have for someone who says, okay, I'm a speaker, I've been on stage, I'm sure I can improve. What are some of the storytelling and performing things that they could be thinking about, that they could start to review their current way of presenting to make it even better?
Yeah, so if they're already a speaker, then you should be filming your talks if you're not. And even if that's on an iPhone and you've just got to stand on a table, just for your own feedback point of view, because you can't improve what you can't see. And even though you're the one delivering it and you're in the moment, it's very different to view it and look at it from an audience perspective. So I would say that's step number one. And I think even if you're a speaker, you don't necessarily like looking at yourself on camera. I still don't. So my rule is I watch it once to get over myself, and then I watch it again to actually learn and think, okay, that works really well. The audience seemed to respond exceptionally well to that part. Let's keep that bit. This bit was a bit dead or didn't really land properly. So what is it about that part of the story that needs enhancing? Or is it relevant, or was it relevant to that particular type of audience? So I think constantly reviewing is extremely important. Obviously, when you're telling stories, not all stories are equal. So those of you who are listening, I'm sure you've been told before that stories are really important, and yes, they are. They have to be relevant to your point is the first thing I would say. A lot of people just tell stories and you're like, I don't know why they're telling me that story. It's not relevant to the point. And it's okay if there's a reveal. Like, it's okay if you sort of confuse the audience for a bit and then the point comes in, but you got to land the point before the end of the talk. So maybe, are you using enough of the five senses in the way that you're telling the story? Are you helping us connect enough to the character? And does that character land with the audience that you're talking to? There's some of the things that I think could be reviewed. And you know what? There's AI now that's exceptionally helpful in helping you craft stories better. So use tools that are available, but still make it your words, just help it with the analysis. And from a performance point of view, how can you put the audience in the story, have them actually feel the story rather than just be a passive observer thinking, oh yeah, that's nice, or oh yeah, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I love it. And the other thing that I find, and it was when I was watching you as well, when you presented, is using stories as a bridge between one part of your presentation and then into the next, and working out which one of those, as you said before, which ones are the soft, really heartfelt parts of the story that then lead into a bigger story or a fun story or whatever. What advice would you give to someone if they're saying to you, oh, I don't think I've got many stories. I talk a lot about facts and I give all the right information. How do I talk about myself and build stories into a keynote when I'm trying to teach something?
Yes. I think you have more stories than you even know you have. Because people say this to me all the time, I don't really have any stories. And then I'll interview them and find out all about them. And I'll say, that's a story. That's a story. I had a client years ago who was she was the MD of a large property company, a Singaporean owned company, but she was the MD for Australia, New Zealand. And she was an engineer by trade. So she got to where she was because of her deep expertise in engineering, not because she was an incredibly impactful speaker. And so she was one of the, I know my stuff, I know what's got to get across, but I just don't have any stories. And as I was talking to her, she was telling me, because she wanted to talk about resilience. It was during the COVID times and she's trying to, get the team motivated. And she used to row. She used to live in the Perth area and she was in Sydney at this time, but she was in Perth. She used to row. And she told me this incredible story about how she learnt that she rowed out too far basically to try and prove a point to her brothers or something that were on the shore. And she got herself into trouble, Nellie, and had to follow the shoreline back. And I can't remember the story properly, but once we developed the story, I'm like, there are so many lessons in that. There's leadership lessons, there's lessons about trusting yourself. There's lessons about not doing something just to prove someone else. And so it became the story and she told it beautifully, but she didn't think it was relevant to anyone. So I think we're all human and we want to hear real human stories. It doesn't have to be a Hollywood blockbuster. So start taking note, because unless you're consciously aware, you might not be realizing how many stories there are. And if you're in business and you're telling a story, it doesn't always have to be your story. Be truthful, like tell them it's not your story. But I would use, when I was in corporate, I would constantly use case studies that I would see when I was out visiting all of the stores. And that was sometimes more powerful than me telling my own, because people saw me in this leadership role and thought, well, of course you could do it, because you're in this role. But when I would tell them about someone that's just started or only been in the company 6 months and how they did this thing, that resonated more. So, if you're listening and you're in business, then choose your story based on your audience always. And it doesn't always have to be your own personal story. It can be stories around you.
And it just needs to be purposeful, doesn't it? It's what's the point of telling the story? It's so that they can learn this and they'll remember it and they'll implement it. I love it. Hey, we have gone through this interview so quickly and I could listen to you forever, Carmen. Obviously, you present really well in any way, shape or form. We always ask our guests the same question on every podcast. So I'm going to ask you as well. If you could go back in time, any time in your life, to a point in life, and give yourself some advice for what you're doing now, what would that be?
Oh, do you know, I always had, when I was doing my acting degree, I always had this thing that if I wasn't if I wasn't a famous actor by, I think it was the time I was 30, then that was it. Like life was over. You just couldn't do it anymore. You couldn't go back to it. So I would say to that younger person that movies and theatre have characters that require someone who's all the way up to maybe 100 sometimes, because that's, you know, a part of the movie, and life doesn't stop at 30. So you don't need to have a cutoff to something that's a dream of yours. And sometimes you don't know how your dreams are going to show up. So mine has now manifested into this business where I get to use both. The 18 years in corporate, I enjoyed it. I was there. I kept, you know, moving up the ladder. I was very successful in senior leadership in the end, and so many lessons were learnt there. And I get to bring back the performance part of myself as well and blend it together. So 21-year-old me never would have dreamed up this business back then. So yeah, I would say it's never too late to follow your dreams.
Brilliant. I love it. What a great message. If you've been listening to this interview and you've thought, I need to know more, I need to find out more about what Carmen does, she has some amazing resources on her website, illuminatedstory.com.au. The link will be below this interview. Look at her masterclasses, find out when she's speaking next, join whatever she's doing, and improve the way that you present, not just on stage, even if you're just in a position where you have to present your ideas or present anything that you want the team to really learn from, or your audience to really be impacted with. Work out how you can create an illuminated story and get some help from Carmen. Thank you so much for being on the show, Carmen. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much, Lauren. It's been a pleasure being here.
Thanks so much for listening to the That's Audacious podcast. Remember, there's no place for modesty in business, and you do deserve to be well known, well paid, and wanted. For more episodes, please subscribe to the podcast on your favourite channel or follow us online. The links are in the description below.